Freak up room, no seat, biting, never bites. Fast water dribbling in the girls down with the guys. Spin now, see, black, you right by. OMG, Mac 4, Robin C, yelling that night. Hot stove talk, Robin C, bringing the hype. EC's alive, plus trust under those in my city life. Right? Queens got the dreams united. On the rag, try vibe, bring me stack. Night and under that chocolate flag. Smack that home out the park. Fuck a deafening black. Side game time, Robin CP time to ignite. Under NYC skies, we fight the good fight. Remains cheer in the orange, we unite. Match forever. I'm fit to be in sight. Match riding high. Energy like a live wire. Queen City chance. Passion never tires. Grand slam dreams and paces always fast. Holding it steady cause we know we gonna last. We the kings of the field, time to ignite. Under NYC skies, we fight the good fight. Remain cheer in the orange, we unite. Match forever, our victory in sight. All hearts ignite like NYC stars. Robin CP, guiding even through scars. Queens got the glow, city anthem flows.
What's up, baseball fans? And of course, what's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the channels for this very special MLB Winter Meetings live special. Day one, technically, of the winter meetings. A lot has happened since we last saw you guys, as Juan Soto did sign with the team we all knew he was going to sign with, the New York Mets, for 15 years, $765 million, with a big old $75 million signing bonus, an opt-out, and all types of incentives to get it up to $800 million. And Cashman spoke. I want to bring this up because of the fact that obviously they lost out on Juan Soto. They congratulated the Mets because what else would you do, right? You got to bow down to the king of New York right now. So you got to be careful. You got to be a good boy because we're going to steal everybody you want if we want them. So Brian Cashman said they believe they went above and beyond for Soto. They were well out of their comfort zone, which we all knew. They were desperately probably praying to whatever God they want to pray to that Soto didn't take that deal, because they would have been bitching and moaning every single year that they can't get anybody. Saying that there's a lot of different ways to build a roster. It doesn't just take one player, which is true. He also said that they're not gonna spend money like drunken sailors, which was very interesting quote, which tells me, Yankee fans, brace yourself, because there's teams that lost out on Solo also, that, you know, the Blue Jays and the Red Sox, that are going after very, very much the same players you are. Some pitching, some outfielders, maybe some infielders as well. So they got a lot of competition in your own division. And sorry I went on that little rant, Chris, but how you doing, buddy?
Was that a little bit of a jab?
Yeah.
At Steve Cohen with that quote over there from them? That seems like a little bit of a jab. You know what I mean? Listen, man, I think Stevie said it in the chat, OMJ, oh my Juan. Yeah, Juan Soto is a New York Met. Trust me, Mets fans, I woke up thinking I woke up from just this amazing dream. And guess what? It was actually a reality. Juan Soto is a New York Met. But guess what? Just as we told you all yesterday, the Mets have a very quick turnaround in terms of these winter meetings officially starting and needing to fill out the rest of their roster, whether it's pitching, bullpen, or the lineup. And I released a video, and as did you, Rob, on our channels respectively. I talked about Pete Alonso and the potential to re-sign him and potentially some competition from the Yankees in that manner if they're going to pivot to their future first baseman now that they lost out on Juan Soto. You were talking about the latest report of Jonathan Loaisiga. I also posted a short on Jonathan Loaisiga. We will get into him here in this stream, I am sure. Again, we will be going over the latest signings. We'll be going over the latest Mets news and rumors. There's plenty of rumors to go around. There's some smoke on Corbin Burns and his tie to the New York Mets, as is Max Fried. So again, a lot to get into. We appreciate everyone being here. Again, this is a fantastic time to be a Mets fan. They're not done. The job is not finished in terms of putting the best product out there. And I do believe Carlos Mendoza is speaking here in a couple of minutes as well. So I know Rob is in tune with that. I don't have my TV accessible right here. But again, appreciate everyone being here. please smash those thumbs up buttons for us on this stream. Both of our channels, subscribe to both of our channels. Not only do we have these conjoined live streams, your Juan Soto watch parties, your MLB Winter Meetings watch parties, right? Just as we're doing right now, but we also have the individual content coming from both of our channel. And if you subscribe to both of us, you got what you need. I can assure you that 100%. So let's get into it.
Yeah, the Winter Meetings is definitely starting ever since Juan Soto signs, and it seems like a lot of teams are going to be aggressive, and the Mets are one of those teams. And again, yeah, Jonathan Loáisiga is on the Mets radar, heavy interest in him. A couple of reports came out. The Mets are in on a couple of the pitchers that we didn't think they might be going after. Now Burns and Fried are on the Mets radar now. Now, how serious that interest is, again, we'll see. But again, they're in it. Again, they're always in on anybody now that they want to be on, and they're a threat to every team if they're very much involved in a player. And again, I said it yesterday when in the breaking news Juan Soto stream. I said you gotta remember, if Mets to get Juan Soto, I would question what they would do to go all in. For they might just sign Pete Alonso just to make the fans happy. They won't go after Burns or Fried. They might go after the Buehler Meyer and just maybe get a stopgap guy for the outfield or something like that. It wouldn't be a big offseason.
Right
now, got Juan Soto. I feel like they're like, well, we already spent a ton of money. We still got a lot of money off the books. Still got a lot of money, a lot of room for error with money wise when it comes to payroll. Let's just go for it. And that's why I think it's going to be a tremendous offseason for the New York Mets. Now, there's a lot of competition for the players that the Mets probably want. One is Pete Alonso. Obviously, Corbin Burns is very sought after. Fried as well. And we can go on and on and on. Bregman, so on and so forth. So it's going to be these winter meetings. And I said, I feel like this is going to be a very active winter meetings. And a lot of the reporters that have spoke for the last 24 hours have stated that they think there's going to be a lot more signings than trades, big trades. So, I mean, I think I agree with that. But let's get into obviously the teams that missed out on Juan Soto, right? We don't have direct topics here, guys. And I was trying to save room to show who's signed, well, the big people who signed and the free agents and the possible trade targets that we know of.
You did a beautiful job, Rob, with this background.
I was trying to fit everything in, and I know I left a few names out and even a couple of sign-ins out, but I was trying to get the big ones that people, are aware of and possibly don't know. So the runners up for Juan Soto, we briefly got into it during the Juan Soto stream last night because it was all about us and the Mets. But when it comes to the Blue Jays, when it comes to the Red Sox, when it comes to the Yankees, right? We all know their offers now, right? They were very solid offers. The Blue Jays basically matched the Mets almost. They basically matched the Yankees. And they were, tremendous, respectable offers by every one of these teams. Where do these guys go now? Because it's starting to look like all three teams in the AL East want the same players, right? Yep. I mean, go down the board, right? There's some every one of the teams talking about Alex Bregman. They're probably going to be in on Castillo if he is on the trade block. Roki Sasaki, Crochet, Burns, Fried, Anthony Santander, Teoscar Hernandez. Where do you think you could start with any one of the teams? Where do you think the AL East teams are going to pivot to? And who do you see is more desperate than the other? Because, again, Cashman just came out and says they're not going to, spend like drunken sailors, but it seems like the Red Sox and the Blue Jays are willing to. So where do you think these teams are going to go?
I think the Yankees, first and foremost. I truly believe this because, again, when you're talking about the first base market, you're not talking about a Juan Soto, right, esque deal, not even a quarter of that, right, in terms of the AAV. You're talking about probably $28 million for Pete Alonso. So if they're willing to go to 47.5 for Juan Soto, and by the way, that's a whole story within itself in terms of the Yankees, from what Joel Sherman was saying on MLB Network earlier today, and the fact that the Yankees obviously offered $47.5 million AAV. The Mets were at 51. The Yankees, or Boris, approached the Yankees again and asked, Steinbrenner, Cashman, whoever was running that operation, would you go and match the Mets? To which they said no. And Boris was also like, okay, well, even if you did Steve Cohen was just going to go higher no matter what you offered, right? And that was just the fact of the matter. So really the Yankees were just outclassed and outpowered, to be honest with you. When is the last time that we can say that in respect to the Mets versus Yankees battling it out for these free agents? But I do think the Yankees shift their focus to Pete Alonso, and I took to my video earlier that I dropped around 1 p.m. on my channel, saying that in the best retaliation, the best answer for the Yankees would be to go ahead and take Pete Alonso away from the Mets, right? It's kind of like an eye for an eye situation, although we know that these two names aren't really comparable. You'll take Juan Soto all day long over Pete Alonso if you have to choose between those two guys. The beautiful aspect of this is that the Mets don't have to choose. If they want to be in on Pete Alonso, they can go ahead and get Pete Alonso, right? And I firmly expect them to do that. Now, we'll get into a little bit later what David Stearns was saying in his interview about how they view Mark Vientos, because again, that's something that is also relating to other free agents and other, respects. But, I think the Yankees pivot to Pete Alonso offensively. But with the not spending like drunken sailors quote, you have to think Cody Bellinger would probably be the best fit for them, especially needing an outfielder. Maybe even, again, Cody Bellinger can play first base too, if I'm not mistaken. So he's a cheaper option than Pete Alonso, obviously, and that would just make the most sense. Pitching wise, I do expect the Boston Red Sox to prioritize their pitching needs. Now, again, their offer was up to $700 million for Juan Soto. So again, not in the same range as the Jays, Yankees, and Mets, but again, it's still a respectable amount to go up to. And if that's any indication of how the rest of their offseason is going to go, they're going to be spenders, right? Probably a top arm and probably a bat too. We've been hearing the smoke around Teoscar Hernandez, to which I heard a report yesterday saying that although the Dodgers remain the favorite for Teoscar Hernandez, Hernandez is reportedly intrigued by the idea of Boston at the very minimum. So they're at least in that conversation in terms of the mind of Teoscar Hernandez. So I do think that in the Blue Jays, man, listen, 760 to lose out on the player while going and upping your offer to 760 is tough. This is why I respect the organization and I respect that fan base, because we had Toronto Blue Jays fans in our Juan Soto live watch party saying, listen, we know that we can offer probably similar money, but we know that he's not coming here. They have a real battle in terms of the overall destination aspect to try to entice free agents. That's just a simple fact of the matter, and that's where they're at a disadvantage. They need a lot of things, Rob. They need a lot of things. So the Blue Jays, I would expect for them to be on and in for everybody and anybody in this free agency. The Boston Red Sox and I think the Yankees are going to be a little bit more methodical, especially with the Yankees in that report. But again, I would expect Fried, Burns, Alonso to be in that realm of competition between those three teams.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. And again, the comments from Cashman, it has to concern Yankee fans because, again, the Blue Jays and the Red Sox seem like they're willing to spend money and they're going to be in on these high-priced free agents. Now, I think the Blue Jays are going to have a hard time bringing Fried and Burns there because I don't think Burns and Fried want to go, north of the border. I think, Fried's a West Coast guy. Burns is a Northern Cali guy. So, people were talking about that, but it seems like, there's a lot of East Coast teams involved with them. I don't see them going to the Blue Jays. Now, Anthony Santander, Teoscar Hernandez, obviously Hernandez was already there, so that's always a possibility to bring him back. Anthony Santander, I think he's going to the highest bidder. I think that's, Juan Soto basically put him on a pedestal at this point, and Santander is going to get a hell of a lot more than people think. And I think most of these guys are, just because the price of every player is going up, regardless if you're average, above average, below average, or the best player in baseball. So I think it's going to be very interesting because there's going to be one AL East team that is going to be holding the bag and it's going to be a very disappointing offseason acquisition wise for one of those teams. I feel like somebody is going to have a fan base that's going to be very upset at them. And I think it's kind of even at this point because, again, what has really anybody done, right? I mean, nothing special, right? Aroldis Chapman, to the Red Sox, that's fine. I mean, that's not earth-shattering or anything like that, but it is a bullpen arm, right? Other than that, what has these other three teams done? Nothing, right? So they got to get better, right? I think it was the president or the GM of the Red Sox said that with Cassis and Duran, Devers, obviously they got a good lineup, right? But they wanted that extra bat, right? They need some pitching, right? They're losing Pavetta, so they need that pitching, and I do think that the Red Sox are going to be I think they're more of a better destination, I would say, for if it comes between the Blue Jays and the Red Sox. I think more players would choose the Red Sox over the Blue Jays.
Yeah.
Well, I think the Yankees, I think, see, here's the problem. Those comments from Cashman, if you're a Yankees fan, you got to be worried because they're not going to outbid for those players. I don't believe they are. And that's why when you said Cody Bellinger is probably the best option, yeah, because the contract's set in stone, they know their money, and they're not competing except for assets, prospect-wise. And, the Cubs aren't stupid. They know the Yankees are desperate at this point now, right? If they don't run up and are they really going to give $220 million to Anthony Santander? Are they going to go into a bidding war for Santander or Teoscar Hernandez or any Burns, Fried, any of those guys? I find that very hard to believe, with the Cashman's comments. So it feels like they're going to go the trade route again. And it's going to be probably Cody Bellinger, which is a solid move. But again, we know we've talked about this to the cows come home about the Yankees. There's a lot of holes, right? I know you kind of like their have a decent rotation. I don't trust their rotation for the life of me. I think they need more pitching. I think they need somebody behind Cole. Rodon is not that guy. Stroman's garbage. Cortez is, a back-end rotation guy that's not really going to help the rotation much. They're in a bad spot. We talked about this. They needed Soto more than the New York Mets. I felt like that for a while, and I felt, especially with Willy Adames going off the board, because that was all the talk. That the Yankees can pivot to Adames, put him at third, Chisholm's at second, and now they only really got to worry about first base, and you're good to go, right? You can work with Dominguez in center and Judge in right, but now Adames is off the board. That was kind of like the best fit for the Yankees. Santander is a nice fit, but I don't know if they want to pay $200+ million. I think the Red Sox or the Blue Jays are willing to bid it out for those guys, for either Teoscar Hernandez possibly, but definitely Anthony Santander.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100%. We'll see exactly the type of market that the Yankees put themselves in. Again, I think the Yankees are going to have to give out a big contract when it's all said and done in this offseason. Like, no matter if it's on the pitching side or no matter if it's on the offensive side. So I think they're going to have to do it regardless, right? But what's actually kind of, I know we're on the AL East topic too, but I would like to talk about a different team that could be in on, Corbin Burnes that we haven't really talked about enough, especially with their signing of one of the names here on the right-hand side. That's the San Francisco Giants. They could be definitely in on either Max Fried or Corbin Burnes, especially with those guys having California ties. That team makes a ton of sense, especially given the fact that, we know that they talked about cutting payroll as well, but I still think they have a lot of money to spend. So I think that they are going to be dark horses to try to steal, not steal, but take away that option from one of those AL East teams in terms of trying to upgrade their rotation. So watch out for the San Francisco Giants as well. But I agree with you. It's kind of hard to see what the Yankees' plan is going to be, because maybe Steinbrenner was like, okay, the only chance that I want to give out an enormous contract this offseason is for the likes of Juan Soto. Anything after that, if we realize that Soto is going elsewhere, if we lose him to the Mets or whoever else it was, we pivot and we have a different strategy. And we know how Cashman operates at the very minimum. Cashman is a very, I don't see that guy going out and having that mindset of, okay, we're going to spend big money, right? And that's probably getting flowed down to him from the top in Steinbrenner, right? He's probably operating off of what the ownership group hell's him.
Yeah.
And, he catches the most flack for it. I don't think Yankees fans talk about Steinbrenner enough in terms of, having that same attitude of the old Yankees, of doing whatever it takes to get the top guys in free agency, because we are seeing in real time a very just crazy shift in the way that they're operating. And for whatever reason that may be, I don't know. But it's very clear that, maybe they trust in a Dominguez to man center field for them. Again, he's not a polished defender, but they probably would trust him a little bit more out there than an Aaron Judge, and it makes sense. And the funniest notion to me is, Yankees fans saying, and actually Buster Olney and Jeff Passan were having this conversation talking about whoever ended up with Juan Soto, that team's Pobo / GM and Cashman and Stearns, there's no way with the way that either of those guys operate are telling their ownership group that this is a smart baseball investment, right? In terms of the overall value and money that you're going to give to Juan Soto, especially given the lack of defensive ability, especially given that he could be a full-time DH in however many years. But the Mets can afford that. The Yankees already have a future DH spot to worry about with Aaron Judge. Mm-hmm. He's not staying out in the outfield for his entire career. He's not.
Yep.
So if Juan Soto becomes that type of player for the Mets where you have to sort of rely on him and his bat primarily, and you don't really want to put him out into the outfield, again, I'd be fine with just DHing him in general right off the bat in year one. But I know a lot of people are going to be against that given what he's making. And I understand the notion, but the Mets are much more flexible because they don't have a future DH on their squad. And if they do, it's Starling Marte, and his contract's up after this year anyway. So again, a lot more flexibility, I think, that we can both say in terms of bringing on Juan Soto roster construction-wise for the Mets rather than the Yankees.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the issue that I think they're going to run into. And, Judge is 33 years old, and I know he's playing during the season. 2 MVPs, one of the a hitter, best player in baseball. The way he hits, and MVP caliber. But again, he's getting up there in age. That's why the Yankee fans that question the overall contract of Juan Soto, and obviously they're going to kill the Mets fans and the Mets for doing that, even though they were a couple of $1 million lower than the Mets offer. They were willing to go that far as well. And again, that's why it's why wouldn't you? Now, again, Steve Cohen could have kept on upping the offer, and the Yankees would have never won that race. But you do wonder, they backed out. Why? Right? Was Juan Soto always going to pick the Mets because of a little bit more money, right? Clearly, there was some issues with Juan Soto and the Yankees, as has been reported, with the family members and all that. He wasn't very happy with what they did with the security guard and his family and stuff like that. So a lot could have been involved. Steve Cohen was the only one to take Juan Soto to his house in Beverly Hills. The only one. Now, that's not saying that could have been the end all be all, but you know what? You know who was in the room with Steve Cohen? His wife, his father-in-law, family, telling and explain, and the Secretary of Travel was in the room. This was strategic planning for Juan Soto. The Secretary of Travel was showing what they do for families traveling wise. As they basically have their if they can't fly with the team, they have a private plane for families to go to, if they have a long road trip, the families can come at any time. That was a big deal. So for everybody to think that it was about money, it wasn't. It was so much more than that. And that's why you got to question why the Yankees didn't try to, again, Juan Soto and Boris went back to the Yankees to match. For all we know, the Yankees, Juan Soto wanted them to match, and he would never went back to the Mets. That could have been a possibility. The Yankees never gave him that chance. So that's just a bad look on the Yankees' part. And now when it comes to what they missed out on, Willy Adames and Juan Soto's off the board now.
Yep. And
that goes for the Blue Jays and the Red Sox as well. Right? I mean, Willy Adames maybe for the Blue Jays, possibly it would have been, but definitely, obviously, Devers is the third base. I mean, well, shortstop, excuse me, Willie Adames. Would they have done that? That's two guys off the board for all those teams. And I honestly think it hurts the Yankees more because those two guys fit the Yankees extremely well. And I feel like the Red Sox and the Blue Jays are going to outbid the Yankees on these other players, Chris.
And I want to go back to that point that you made about, Steve Cohen and the pitch that he made for Juan Soto, going beyond just the money and basically, in lack of a better term and just simplest terms, we are going to take care of you and your travel needs, your family's travel needs. This is a family organization, right? And Alex Cohen is a huge player in that. Huge. And that's what some people like. I know some people talk about it, but it doesn't get talked about enough in terms of how big of a, factor Alex Cohen is in these sort of talks and meetings, etc. And that's what I like, getting everybody involved, because she's also involved on a day-to-day basis, which is awesome. It's tremendous. And there's something to be said for just the Mets turning into this pure class organization through and through, on and off the field. And that's the key, and off the field as well, because you take a look at what did we say going into last offseason that we wanted to see change from 2023 to 2024? We said that 2023 team did not look like a tight-knit unit, right? They did not hang out off the field. In the clubhouse, you probably had some guesses in terms of, there just being some weird vibes. And again, we can't go into the clubhouse, so it's all assumptions based off of what we see on the field and in the dugout. But that was not even questioned at all in 2024.
Yep.
And this offseason, again, especially in these Soto sweepstakes, for that to come out and Andy Martino to report on that, and all the other reporters, John Heyman, for crying out loud, was even reporting on that, and that being one of the factors as well. And I know that Yankees fans are going to come in here and say, oh, BS, spare me, this talking point, it's all about the money, whatever. I get it. It's a coping mechanism for them. I understand. But for Mets fans that actually understand the way that the Mets are operating right now, and that everyone knows that it's like, Steve Cohen, primarily doing these negotiations along with David Stearns, etc. But there are other factors involved here. And I do just have to tip my cap and shout out Alex Cohen as well, because that is just a beautiful thing to hear. And that's exactly the embodiment. It gives us Mets fans confidence, right? That this is going to be a destination spot, right? That players want to come here because of not only the on-field successes, but also how the Mets and this organization treats these players off the field as well, and their families, right? That's a very important part.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100% you're correct about that. And that's the thing that I think that people are forgetting here. And this is not saying that the Red Sox didn't have a really good meeting with them, or the Blue Jays, right? But it did seem like the Yankees were lacking in their plan or their convincing of Juan Soto to be there. And you know what? They should have had an easy path to convincing Juan Soto, because he was already in the building, right? You got to make it so perfect. You hit, and this goes back to the same thing with the Yankees. They still believe the aura, the ghost of the Bambino, the ghost of Yankee past, and just the Yankee brand is enough. And they have to, they're still living in the past. Right, I think every day Cashman goes home and watches the '98 team, and watches that World Series series. Like I truly believe that. Like they're lost in that aspect. Their analytics are way behind, as it's been stated by players. Players leave there and become better. That has been a problem, specifically pitching. Like that has been an issue. And don't think players don't care about that either, right?
Yeah.
Look at all the pitchers, right? Evaldi, right? Sonny Gray, right? Just keep on going on and on and on. Look at all the pitchers. Look at all the players that have left the Yankees. One was on the Mets. The guy was basically almost out of baseball. That's how bad Luis Severino was. They couldn't fix the simple thing of tipping pitches. that just shows you, and it's annoying to say because we talk about how good their bullpen has been and how they figured what guys that they can choose around the league that they can get on a scrap heap and put them in the bullpen and it works. But it seems like there's something missing there. And I think Juan Soto being in the building saw everything. And unless you're Aaron Judge and Juan Soto, you might struggle and have issues. And I think that's a big factor now that I don't believe people, or at least the Yankee brass and Yankee fans, can understand and can't get over.
Listen, and I hope that while I'm talking, my connection holds true. So if I'm jumping, I do apologize. These internet providers got to get their routers correct, Rob. I know that we both have had some Wi-Fi struggles in the past, so I do thoroughly apologize about that. But what other owner in baseball do you see like front 2 to 3 rows in playoff games and just games in general, right? Just sitting behind the dugout and right there. Not often.
Every game.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
Like in a clinching game, you would see them there. But every game he was there with his wife and family members. Like
exactly.
You don't see that. Like they're in the suites. Like that's where they are, if they are there at all during the playoffs. You know what I'm saying? If it's not obviously a clincher. So, yeah, the Dodgers owner too, but again, on the road every time, no, we're talking about that like all the time. But again, the Dodgers owner is fine. I mean, it's the Guggenheim Group. I mean, and God knows how many other people that are minority owners, right? We know how much money they have as well. But yeah, man.
4 minutes ago, by the way, Clay Holmes was officially announced by the New York Mets.
All right, passed his physical, and we wait for more sign-ins from the Mets and possible trades. And we're going to get to a little bit of pitch and talk right now as Roki Sasaki has been officially posted. And he still can't sign until, like, officially on the dotted lines until January 15th, if I'm not mistaken. But obviously he can talk. He's posted now. He can talk to teams. The money is not a concern because the money is what it is. And, there's only a certain amount of money each team can give that player. It's basically his choice of going to what team. The money is basically very minimal difference from any team. That's in for him. So maybe it's $500,000, $600,000, maybe $1 million, maybe. But the numbers, the money is so close. It's going to come to, can somebody convince him to be there, right? He already has probably a team or two on his mind, and everybody believes it's probably the Padres, Giants, and Dodgers because that's the West Coast. But can there be a possibility the Yankees, the Mets, the East Coast teams, Boston, Toronto? Probably not. But again, teams on the East Coast have an opportunity, can convince Roki Sasaki to join their team because money is irrelevant at this point, right? You don't have to give him $325 million like you had to give Yamamoto. It's a huge difference, right? It's all about the signing bonus, the international bonus money. What are your thoughts on the Sasaki? I mean, we've talked about it a lot during Mets Hot Stove. We want him, right? A lot of teams want him. He's a phenom. This is the guy you put at the top of your rotation. Where do you think he's going to go? And do you feel like a team can actually convince him that's not the West Coast to join their team?
First off, I see a report here saying Jeff Passan talking about Steve Cohen, quote unquote, he is ready to unleash the Kraken. Whatever that may mean. So again, Mets fans, I mean, this is Jeff Passan talking about Steve Cohen here. Buckle up. I agree with you, and I posted again a video of Sasaki about analyzing the type of pitcher that he is and analyzing his market if the Mets are serious contenders for him or not. There would need to be a workaround, quite simple, right? With the whole Elian Pena, we did get confirmation about the whole Elian Pena, situation and Sasaki taking that into account. But I do think, right, if there was a player that could change the mind of someone that is thought to not want to come to the East Coast, if there's a move around baseball that could change that player's mind, it would be Juan Soto. It would be Juan Soto. And you know what? I'm not trying to sell Mets fans because I'm still very skeptical myself, and I'm not going to hype this up to more than what it should be because I still do believe that he is going out to the West Coast. But guess what? This isn't the last phenom Japanese pitcher that we're going to see come through the pipeline. It's not. That is a very talented country when it comes to the game of baseball, in terms of the talent that comes out of Japan, right? And we've seen a surplus of talent over the past couple of years coming out. And Yamamoto and Sasaki, obviously the last couple of off seasons being the headliners. You know, the next time this situation comes around, I'm not saying that this is going to apply to Sasaki. Maybe his mind is already made up, right? Maybe it is. And I'm not doubting that it is, whether it's the West Coast, the Padres, maybe the Giants have a say there if they strike out on Burns and Fried, and the Dodgers. But for the next go around, right? The next time this situation arises, whatever that name may be, maybe this is the start of the thought process. Okay, I'm cool with going to New York. You know what I mean? I'm cool with going to the Mets organization. They're building something special there. And I like that notion. Again, I'm not trying to sell anybody that this Sasaki thing is going to come to fruition. There are still a lot of hurdles that the Mets would have to go through, money-wise, and also just changing the mind of Sasaki in general. But he did get posted today. He can't sign officially until January 15th. So him and his agent are just going to meet with teams, presumably for the next month, and then get the assessment there. But again, this Juan Soto signing has so many trickle-down effects, Rob, that I'm excited, maybe not fully for the Sasaki situation, but definitely for the future of this international free agent process as it pertains to the New York Mets. And again, you know, I've spoken to a good buddy on X. You can find his account, BKFan09 on X, international free agent process guru for the New York Mets, saying that the IFA class for 2026 he thinks is actually better than the class for 2025. So this is a realm and an aspect of this organization that, you know, they're taking very big pride in terms of ramping up that process and being as efficient as possible in terms of the scouting department, in terms of how they allocate their money, and bringing in the top IFA free agents that they possibly can. Now, again, it might not apply to Sasaki, but again, going forward, and I believe the scouting department turnover this past year was very great in terms of the IFA scouts for the Mets organization. So again, Sasaki, I still think he lands up in the West Coast, right? I still think he goes over there, but the future is bright in terms of landing these IFA prospects and hopes to persuade them to come to New York.
Yep, and you know, the Mets for years under the Wilpons never spent money into international scouting much at all, right? They had like the high school, college scouts, you know, the U.S. bound scouts. They had a little bit in Puerto Rico, a little bit in DR, but you know, the Mets are global now when it comes to international scouting. Like, they're all over the world, you know, from Asia to you know, Latin America, you know, to the Caribbean, all over the country, all over the world now. And that's a huge difference, right? You know, international signings bonus money, you know, the Mets are going to be a little bit behind on that because they're going to lose some because they're over the luxury tax most of the time. So that's an issue. But they're going to, Stearns and the scouts are going to have to pick and choose and hope they pick the right IAF guys that are important, that they think can be special. And that's what they're going to do, right? The Mets are very much ready to give money to the one of the best international free agents on the market in Pena. And, you know, that can come to fruition. But again, I think Sasaki has a lot to do with that. And they don't have to throw the money at the international player yet until they kind of have at least a feeling if Sasaki's willing to go elsewhere than the West Coast. Because if they have that feeling, you go for the 22-year-old phenom pitcher over a 16-year-old that you don't know what he's going to be and not going to be here for at least 2-3 years, right?
For sure.
You just have to do that. I think it's the smart way to go about it, especially when you need pitching. And this guy, you'll have him for the next 4 to 6 years for very, very, very minimal. You're going to get a tremendous value, even if he's not as great as everybody is expecting him to be, and he has a 3.5 ERA. It's still a bargain. You just gave $17 million to a guy who had a 4.8 ERA, 4.5 ERA. So it's still a bargain. And there's so much upside with minimal risk. And that's where I think the Mets are going to try for Sasaki. But again, you got a month to talk to this kid. If you have any indication that he's not really interested in coming to the East Coast or trying to use a team or two on the East Coast to again, there is no using at this point because the money is irrelevant for the most part because obviously, again, there's no highest bidder here. You would think the Mets would be the highest bidder if they want to be. So you would just think that if they would get the idea right away, if this kid is serious, that wants to come to the East Coast, because there was some rumors, Chris, or reports that he is looking at how teams are developing their pitchers and the chemistry and the culture of the teams and stuff like that. If those reports are true and it's not just geography and where the West Coast is to Japan, then the Mets have a real shot.
Yeah.
Because of the culture and what's been talked about the pitching lab with the New York Mets and how they basically for the last year and a half fixed pitchers that basically were on their last breath in Major League Baseball.
I agree. They are building something special in terms of not only these projects, right, but in terms of just like youthful pitching all the way down the minor league farm system in terms of prioritizing that aspect of their their farm system. And that's something that we love to hear because maybe before a guy like Spro or Christian Scott came onto the scene, I mean, in the past couple of years, at the very minimum, before that whole wave of other pitchers, back in the 2015 era was there, how many exciting pitching prospects have we realistically talked about in those middle years? Not many at all. And so, yeah, I'm excited for that aspect. Again, it's not a 0% chance is what I'll say. That's how I will define it as. It's not a 0% chance. It's still slim in my humble opinion, but the Mets could also be sneakily linked, although we haven't heard the most concrete rumors surrounding this. Buster Only just tweeted something out about an hour and a half ago talking about the Giants being heavily in play for Max Fried, but that their competition would be Boston, the Yankees, and the Mets. And so I take that as you mentioned it yesterday in the live stream, but I didn't even hear about the Mets being tied to Max Fried. So that is a pleasant surprise for me, even if they're only doing their due diligence. Now, there has been a lot of smoke today about the Mets and Corbin Burnes market heating up. And again, we still have that Walker Buehler, report in the background just kind of circulating. So the Mets, I know Mets fans, we are all concerned about the pitching. And everybody says, from other teams especially, oh, you got Juan Soto, congrats, look at your pitching staff. The Mets are going to go out and I'm going to just go out on a limb right now and say the Mets aren't just getting one more starter, they're getting two. Because, again, they are not going to rely and go into the season with having a competition of Clay Holmes and Paul Blackburn in the back end of the rotation. They want to have the most depth as possible. And we both agree that Clay Holmes probably will end up as the setup guy, to be honest with you, if the way I see it. But I think they're going to go after two more starters. It's not just one. Even though they could get away with just adding one, not happening. They're going to add a guy.
Top line starters?
No. They're going to do one midline starter, and I consider Walker Buehler as a midline starter. No, they're not going to get two top line starters. Although, again,
Sasaki Fried is more of a possibility than Fried and Burnes.
I would give
because of money situation.
Depending on what Shamania's outlook is, I would say Shamania is also sneakily involved in that conversation. I think that the Mets are still involved on the Shamania sweepstakes. I really do.
What we heard from Buster Only, and then what Passan just said, that that Steve Cohen's going to release the Kraken, or that's Jeff Passan. This is the guy that everybody wants to hear from. Anything that leaks, they want Passan to know or to bring or to report it. He reported, and Passan does not say anything that can hurt him ever, right? That's why he wasn't tweeting during the whole Juan Soto situation. He never tweeted. Every other reporter tweeted. Yeah, Chris, what happened?
Asked, who is this? Chandler Rome of The Athletic, Astros beat writer, asked if the Astros would listen to trade offers for Kyle Tucker or Framber Valdez. GM Dana Brown replied, in part, "We'll listen on anybody."
Ooh.
We
Dave
talked
Stearns
about.
is kicking. I'm telling you.
We talked about
Kyle right now going like that, man. I'm telling you.
That's what I like to hear. Although Kyle Tucker was, a thought process for us as a backup to Juan Soto, obviously, right? But lefty bat. We'll talk about another lefty bat that I really want in terms of the outlook for the lineup. And we talked about him, and you weren't really enthused, but I might need to change your mind here a little bit. But Framber Valdez, you know what I mean? Like, I would take Framber Valdez. He's going on one more year. You can decide if you want to extend that contract. You most likely will at the end of the 2025 season. I would pay Framber Valdez. Absolutely.
Correct.
100%. So it's just interesting. I wanted to bring that up because I saw that we were having this direct conversation on last night's stream. So it's very relevant.
Yeah. And that's the thing that we're talking about, right? If the Astros lose out on Alex Bregman, what is the incentive to keep Kyle Tucker that they're not going to pay? Clearly, because they don't want to go. They already offered Alex Bregman a decent offer, but are they really going to be outbidding anybody else that wants Alex Bregman? Probably not. So that means the same thing for Valdez and the same thing for Tucker. And that's what I was saying, that like it's a trickle down effect, right? If they don't get Bregman, if Bregman goes elsewhere, their incentive is probably to rebuild. That's the smartest thing to do, especially if they know they're not going to sign Valdez or Tucker or extend them. They're going to rebuild. And the best way to rebuild is to trade guys that still have a control, even if it's for 1 year. You can get possibly at the very least 2 top prospects, maybe even 3 top 10 prospects for each one of those guys. And your rebuilding process can jumpstart very quickly. And we all know the Astros are extremely good at doing that. They basically lost a TV contract by losing 300 games each year by doing that. So they're not afraid to rebuild, and they're not going to hesitate to do that. And I think it's a situation where they tried it 1 more year by trading for Justin Verlander, making a couple of moves at the deadline to go for it 1 more time into 2023 and 2024 with those stars that they have, knowing that Bregman was going to be a free agent. Tucker and Valdez basically next year is on the verge of being free agents. They were going for it there. And now that it didn't work last year, they're not stupid. They've been very successful in trying and knowing when to rebuild. And this has been problems for a lot of teams. They've been holding on the last moments for these guys. And look, here's the thing. The Astros they could wait until the deadline to do it, sure. But right now you have more teams involved, because there could be a team that that are involved now that might not be having a good season and might not be in that race. Now, you can say who it might be, but the best time to do it is in the offseason right now, because, they're all in the same hotel right now. They can do it very easily. And not saying that this is going to come to fruition, but Chris just said it. The GM said it of the Astros. They're listening to everybody. And if it's an offer they like, you got to do it. And again, this is where the Mets are right in the prime position. And again, other teams are too. But again, when you have Juan Soto now, and Passan says Cohen's releasing the Kraken, and Buster Only saying they're in on Fried, multiple reports saying they're in on Burns, They're in on Alex Bregman, as we'll definitely get into that in just a moment, but we want to get more into the pitching trade possibilities as well. It's so many options. And Carl Mendoza's on MLB Network right now, by the way. I have it on mute, so I don't know what he's talking about, but if anybody in the comments wants to say, we can, talk about that for a second, whatever he's saying. So yeah, I tend to agree. The Astros are it's going to be very interesting because obviously the Mets have a relationship now with the Astros, right? We know about that trade. And, it was a great trade for the New York Mets. They got 2 top 10 prospects for Verlander, and that's lovely. And, maybe we have to give one of them back to get a Valdez or Tucker, but I think some people might be okay with that, depending on the situation. Garrett Crochet, Chris. Right? I kind of think the Mets are probably leaning away from that because it's going to cost a tremendous amount. He's got multiple years of control. Obviously, he's not a free agent, so it's going to cost a lot. And I think the Mets, obviously, they probably talked and probably, made a call to see what it's going to take because obviously Stearns wouldn't be doing his job if he didn't. This is clearly not Mets related at least to this point, because it seems like Fried, Castillo, Burns are on the radar of the Mets other than Crochet. You haven't really heard the Mets and Crochet linked. I think Crochet is getting traded by the end of this winter meetings. The reporters have said that multiple times in MLB Network. All indications are they're not trying to have this linger. Where do you think Crochet is going to go? And what do you think the White Sox can actually get for Crochet overall in the aspect of assets?
So a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about Garrett Crochet, we were talking about a market consisting of the Mets and the Red Sox, right? 2 teams that are thought to have a plethora of, top 100 pipeline assets to give up for Crochet. Now it's looking like maybe the Red Sox shift their focus to, a free agent top line starter. Although I honestly would not rule out the fact that they would go get a top line starter in the free agency route and also understand that they have a surplus of top even 50 pipeline prospects and go get Garrett Crochet as well to build kind of like a super rotation a la the Los Angeles Dodgers. But you know what? At this point, I think it's, from what I've been hearing and what we've been hearing, right, on social media, the Phillies and the Yankees are actually considered 2 of the strongest destinations, and the Cubs are in on pitching, so they're going to be in on Garrett Crochet as well. The Reds are a sneaky up-and-coming team that are going to need some help in their rotation. They could be in on him as well. My fear, and this is a team that just made a signing for the back end of their bullpen in Jordan Romano, is that the Phillies could be front runners to land a guy like Garrett Crochet. And if you have a 1-2 punch of Crochet and Wheeler, that is a scary sight. That is a scary sight.
Yeah.
I'm not really in tune with what the Phillies farm system looks like. I'm really not, so I won't speak on that in terms of what the return could be. But the White Sox don't strike me as a team that are going to put up a big hassle in terms of getting the best return possible. They'll get a good return, right? They're obviously not dumb, right? In terms of letting a guy of this caliber go while having 2 years of control left. But in terms of taking this to the absolute maximum, right, and taking their time, engaging the actual market. We've been hearing reports saying that it could happen in the next coming days during the winter meetings, right? That is a very short timeline for this big of a trade to happen, for this much of a top line starter to be dealt. And so, any team that kind of deals with the White Sox, I feel confident that they can get him for decent value in comparison to what all these experts are saying Garrett Crochet is worth. I'm honestly worried that it's going to be the Philadelphia Phillies, and at least what we've been hearing. The Yankees are going to be in on him as well. That'd be a great one too with Cole and Crochet, but obviously in division, with how good that Phillies rotation already is in general, that would be my primary concern. And I agree with you is that we haven't heard much smoke on the Mets being interested. And again, with Luis Castillo and the Mariners openly stating that they will take calls on Castillo, and now the Astros, maybe they're in on somebody else in the trade talks.
Yeah, and it's a good point about the Phillies. And early in the offseason, the GM of the White Sox says what he was looking for. Yeah, he's looking for a couple of prospects, but he's also looking for guys that are already MLB players already. And the talk with Phillies willing to trade Alex Bohm and Castellanos is also another option. And also Suarez, you can package one or two prospects with, a Castellanos or most likely a Bohm. And that's a package that I think the White Sox would take. Now, it depends on what the other teams are, right? I think teams are starting to realize that a lot of the Yankees prospects don't pan out, and the Yankees prospects farm system is not as good as, the media loves to portray them as. I think the Yankees are going to have a hard time getting guys like Crochet. I think they probably better off just spending the money, which I don't think they'll do either. But yeah, the Phillies are a great point, right? The Phillies have been quiet for the most part, except for getting Romano to basically replace Estevez in the bullpen. They haven't done much, right? We know about Dombrowski. He's a go-getter, right? They spent a ton of money. And I've talked about this for, at the end of the season when the Mets beat the Phillies, that each of the last 3 years they gotten lower and lower in the play, not as far each year since it was World Series, NLCS, NLDS, and they're on the verge of it's kind of do or die for them. At some point, Harper's getting up there. You're going to get older. Wheeler's going to get older. The other guys are going to get older. Now you're going to start paying your younger guys. And, again, we saw what was the issue with the Phillies. Their rotation, it looked really good on paper, but, that could be an issue going forward. And that's why they're probably in on Crochet. It's going to be very, very, it's going to be eye-opening because I think that, I know you said that you don't think the White Sox are going to make much of a fuss. I think they've been talking for a while with these teams, and the winter meetings just had heated it up a little bit more because all you got to do is, knock on the door across from you in the hotel room and, go into a suite of the team, and that's it. So it's very easy at this point to do that. And that's why a lot of people believe Crochet is going to be on another team by the end of the winter meetings.
Well, that's a great point by you too, because guess what? They floated him out there as being available at the deadline this past season, and the Dodgers made a formal offer for him. Now, obviously the Dodgers don't have any use for him anymore, given the status of their rotation in 2025. They're not trading for. Don't even try to put that idea in my head.
I don't even want to say no anymore. I don't want to.
I'm more scared of them landing Tanner Scott with as good as their bullpen is. They re-signed Blake Trinan, and they're in on Tanner Scott. So yeah. So they already have a feel, the White Sox do, in terms of what a package looked like from the Dodgers, and so they will probably use that as a basis for any trade packages that teams offer up during these winter meetings, I would say. Yeah.
So look, I think the Crochet that bomb's gonna drop any day now. The Phillies have been rumored again. There's multiple other teams that, the Reds were talked about very heavily pursuing Crochet as well, and they got a ton of prospects as well that they can mess with. So it's gonna be interesting. Listen, get them out of the NL. Don't bring them to the NL. What I say, keep them in the American League, right? Bring them to the AL East. Let the Yankees deal with them. Just don't have them in our division or in the NL. I don't want to deal with that. So Crochet is going to. I think he's going to be. That's probably going to be the one big trade that we see these winter meetings. I don't think anything bigger is going to happen trade wise at the meetings. I think more free agents are going to come off the board, big name free agents. And that leads to one of the bigger free agents on the market in Alex Bregman. And I talked about this and David Stearns talked about Vientos when they asked him about Vientos, because the reporters are on it right now. There's rumblings. They're not 100% just leaving the possibility of Vientos being the third baseman. And Stearns kind of left that up in the air. And there's a reason for that. Why? Because first base is open for the New York Mets at this moment. There's enough teams in on Pete Alonso that could up the price where the Mets are not comfortable bringing back Pete Alonso. And I'm telling you guys right now, as much as there wasn't a number for Juan Soto, there is a stopgap number for Pete Alonso. One, because I just believe, I think they worry about him long term. And that's not just the Mets. This is baseball in general. But again, Pete Alonso is going to have a desperate team. The Mariners, if they can shed payroll, specifically Castillo, they're going to be big players for Pete Alonso, right? That's been established. If they can shed Castillo's contract, they'll probably go really hard after Pete Alonso. So the Castillo trade possibility might be more of on the forefront, because they need to shed payroll to get a big bat that they desperately need. And sorry, I went off track a little bit, but Alex Bregman is the guy that got an offer from the Astros. We know the Yankees are involved. I believe they said the Red Sox were involved, which was interesting. I'm not sure why, but again, you got the DH, you got shortstop. Bregman was a shortstop in college. I mean, I don't know if the range is there anymore at 30 years old, but the Blue Jays, would he go to the West Coast? Maybe. But where are you thinking Bregman right now, Chris? He's going to get a pretty hefty contract. If the Mets are going to be releasing a Kraken here, and the Mets are starting to show more interest than we originally thought in Bregman, and the comments from Stearns about Vientos kind of hinting at Vientos is not 100% the third baseman. I mean, again, for all we know, Vientos can be the DH. And I know that's not breaking news here, and he left it in the air, lifted up in the air with Vientos as the third baseman. Let's put it this way. Do you feel like Bregman can be more East Coast trajectory or somewhere else?
I don't know if I got the same vibe that you did with what David Stern's comments was, to be honest with you, because I'm looking at what Mike Mayer said right here. Also mentioned that they currently view Mark Vientos as their third baseman, not first baseman. I think that's what he was saying. And he was also saying that they would love to bring Pete Alonso back. So I have expressed my personal opinion on my reservations that the Mets are going to entrust in Mark Vientos at first base, and I still hold true to that. Now, what I will say, though, is that on the flip side of things, right? And again, nothing, as you just said, I'll back that up in terms of David Stearns leaving a lot of things open for interpretation, right? As is every GM and manager. They're going to do that in the winter meetings. They're not going to reveal their hand. But, if there was an opportunity for Vientos to move to first base, and let's say on the off chance, because I do think it's an off chance, right? If David Stearns is going to start thinking that way, let's just say he starts hypothetically and they move Vientos to first base. Yeah, I'm signing Alex Bregman, and I'm not thinking twice about it at all. At all. 100%. At all. I mean, yeah. And that's a guy that I would, especially if Steve Cohen is in this mindset that Jeff Passan is talking about. Yeah, I would 100% pay Alex Bregman. No doubt about it. Again, I'm not confident, especially given, I think we might have read this two different ways, right, Rob? I think I read this as Vientos is more inclined to be the third baseman, and David Stearns wants to go that route. For me, in simplest terms, what I got from David Stearns is that there's nothing for certain, obviously, in the open market, but that they are trying their hardest to retain Pete Alonso. That's what I got from David Stearns.
Yeah, and this is where I come back to saying I don't think Pete Alonso wants to be as much as he's told us he wants to be a Met. Because, again, The Mets are leaving it open for a reason, right? I think they have a number in mind for Pete Alonso, and they're not passing that. I know that's crazy to say after you give $765 million to Juan Soto, but Pete Alonso is not Juan Soto, and he's not even close to that. So that's where you come. That's where you start to think, and you start looking at the free agent market, and you're like, would they go after Bregman? Yeah, I think if the realistic possibility is going after Bregman, I mean, this guy is an elite player. This guy is postseason potent. This guy shows up in the postseason, right? Stop giving me the numbers during the regular season again, right? His numbers are perfectly fine. He puts the bat on the ball. He doesn't strike out a lot. He's an RBI machine. I know he had only 75 RBIs last year, but he missed almost 25 games. He plays those 25 games. He's probably getting up to 90 to 95 RBIs, which is perfectly fine. And he's just a guy that when he goes to the plate, you're confident, right? He's been consistently consistent throughout his career. And again, Pete Alonso already has shown his inconsistencies. Where would you go if the numbers are similar, right? Let's just say, right? Obviously, Bregman's a third baseman, Pete Alonso's a first baseman. But Chris, let me ask you, if the numbers are similar contract-wise, right? Possibility, they're going to have similar, I think they might have similar offers on the table, right? Maybe a little more, a little less, but you're thinking both of these guys are going to get 6-7 years, most likely closer to 200, like 180 to 200. How can you not choose Bregman over Pete Alonso just based on consistency from Bregman? Now, again, I would lean towards Pete Alonso only because he's a New York guy. He played in New York, right? We've seen what he done in the playoffs. He finally, he showed up in the playoffs, right? After having a bad season, a down season for Pete Alonso. I find it hard to believe the Mets might go more. I'm trying to think like Stearns here, right? Pete Alonso shows he can be inconsistent, right? It seemed like he never adjusted during the season. Maybe it was the pressure of the contract, free agency. I don't know. But Bregman has a proven track record being so completely consistent in the regular seasons. Just look at his overall numbers throughout the regular seasons through his career. And the postseason, he's been one of the best with stats-wise in the postseason. So what would you do, and what do you think Stearns is thinking here?
I don't think Bregman's power numbers that we've seen in Houston would translate to Citi Field. I don't think that they would translate.
I'm glad you said that because I checked this split. They're very similar on the road and home, specifically the last couple of years.
It could be for sure. But let's be honest, the left field dimensions, I mean, do the math on that. I don't know the correct numbers on that, but if you're talking about, is this still Minute Maid Park? I'm not sure if it is. Anyways, whatever it is over there now versus Citi Field, I mean, he's not putting as nearly many balls out of the yard, in my estimation, at that park in Citi Field rather than in Houston. So I think the power numbers do go down. And for me, to answer your question, I look at the raw power capability, and I look at a guy in Juan Soto now that you have in your lineup, again, which is why I'm very adamant about batting Juan Soto behind Pete Alonso. I think to maximize your power, you would choose Pete Alonso. And that's not only, right? I mean, that's really what it is. It's just maximizing the power. I do understand the playoff provenness, right? The experience factor. I understand the consistency in terms of the regular season numbers as well. I'm not going to shy away from the fact that Pete Alonso was abysmal with runners in scoring position, which is why I'm advocating for the Mets to throw Juan Soto out there behind Pete Alonso if they re-sign him. But I take a look at Bregman. I understand he's a great ball player. I would absolutely, if Pete Alonso walks, if Bregman's available, I would go after Bregman very, very much so, 100%. But if you're telling me that both these guys are available and you have to choose one to maximize the power of this lineup, right? You're talking about, especially if the Mets go out and they're serious about one of the candidates that I really hope that they're serious about, potentially platooning at DH for them, you would have a 20-plus home run guy And you have that with Alex Bregman, so I'm not going to fault that. But I'm talking about maximizing it, right? Pete Alonso's easy 35, 40. In his worst season, Pete Alonso posted 240, a 788 OPS with 34 home runs. I understand the RBIs were down. I understand he did not live up to the expectations of being a middle of the order bat, right? I understand that, and I will accept that. But the numbers at face value were still respectable. They were. And we cannot deny that. I would choose Pete, just to answer your question.
Okay, so again, I care about run production. That's what I care about, right? I can care less when he hit the home runs when it was 10-0, and that's where we're going to care about home runs. I guarantee you, the 25 home runs that Bregman hit were more important. He hit more important home runs and more big home runs in clutch spots than Pete Alonso's 34 home runs. I would love to break that down because
he only had 75 RBIs though,
but he missed 25 games.
26 home runs with 75 RBIs. The math isn't mathing there for me in terms of having.
If he missed 20 games, say another 5 home runs, give or take. So you're on 30 home runs. And again, I'm not saying he's going to hit 25, 30. He's going to hit 30 home runs at Citi Field. I'm not saying that. But his splits home and road, he hits home runs on the road, just as good as he does at home. Yeah, he loves that Crawford box for sure. But again, I'm going back. I know home runs, and again, with Vientos showing up, with Juan Soto now, with Lindor's 25 to 30 home runs, you're getting 30 home runs from at least from Juan Soto. You're getting 25 to 30 home runs from Vientos. The power numbers are there, so we're not losing so many home runs than we actually think. And then add 20 plus home runs, 25 home runs from Bregman, who is a run producer. You're getting more run producers here. This was the issue for the Mets, was the run production. Pete Alonso lost us a lot of games because he couldn't come up in run production. He couldn't do much in clutch situations with run production. And regardless of the home runs, times you just need base hits. Bregman puts the bat on the ball and is willing to take a double down the line to score runs when Pete Alonso is trying to hit the ball over the wall. And that's been consistent in his career. And again, this is not trying to hate on Pete Alonso. I'm just talking about run production. The problem with the Mets, and it was glaring a lot of the times with Pete Alonso, was the fact that it was constant. He kept on coming up with men on base in big spots. And if he didn't hit a home run, the runs were not coming in. And that's what I worry about, right? Them 34 home runs, that's irrelevant to me. Because although I guarantee you a lot of those home runs were in garbage time and weren't big home runs. And I can guarantee you, if we can really break it down, Bregman's home runs, even though they're 10 less, 10 home runs less, they were more productive. And damn it, I don't want to say it because I want Pete back because I like what he did in the playoffs. He showed me something there. But again, we also have to make the playoffs, right? And not saying Pete Alonso can't help do that. Like I'm hoping Pete Alonso can have a bounce back season. But again, the inconsistency worries me, right? Again, I don't want to start the season with question marks. And again, is Pete Alonso a major question mark? I'm not going to go there. But it's a question mark, right? If Juan Soto can help Pete Alonso see more pitches, why can't he do that for Alex Bregman? Right? You can put any player in front of Juan Soto, and they're going to see more pitches.
Do you want to know a funny stat, Rob?
Good.
Both of these guys that we're talking about right now,
yep,
with runners in scoring position in 2024. He had a 232 batting average and a 762 OPS with runners in scoring position. Alex Bregman, with runners in scoring position, had a 230 batting average with a 694 OPS.
Okay.
Pete Alonso actually outperformed Alex Bregman with runners in scoring position. Let's take a look at a different situation here, because again, as you were talking, I'm kind of like I was curious.
I'm glad you brought it up.
Alex Bregman. Let's take a look at another clutch stat. Right, 2 outs, runners in scoring position. Alex Bregman hit 194 with a 620 OPS. Pete Alonso in that situation hit 239 with a 771 OPS. So objectively, Pete Alonso hit better with runners in scoring position. As terrible as he was, as terrible as I called him out to be, he was objectively better with runners in scoring position and those clutch situations.
Numbers don't lie, right? There you go. So again, I'm not trying to be the devil's advocate here because again, it would be stupid for me to say I wouldn't want Bregman, and it's not going to hurt my feelings if the Mets choose Pete Alonso over Bregman, because again, it's not hand in hand here, because obviously Bregman's a third baseman, Pete Alonso's a first baseman, but you would assume, I mean, you might not. You can get Bregman and Alonso, put Bregman at third, who's the better defender at third base, put Vientos in DH, and Pete Alonso at first, and my God, that lineup is tremendously scary.
After Juan Soto, though, I would love that, but after Juan Soto, it's just like, oh, there's no chance.
But again, passes said release the Kraken. Like, I mean, that's releasing the Kraken. That's releasing the Kraken and open up some beers. Like, it's something, again, is that a pipe dream? I don't know because you know what? The Yankees in 2009, when they didn't make the playoffs in 2008, they spent nearly, a tremendous amount of money on pitching, which the one thing that they needed was pitching. They got 3 top line starters. You know what I'm saying? So, and other teams, the Dodgers did it too, last year, Ohtani, Glasnow, all that stuff. Like, so teams spend a ton of money and just to go for it. And again, if this is done, you got Juan Soto now, you're on that plan A trajectory. Is it a possibility they're thinking about Bregman and Alonso and maybe just go Buehler Manaea? I mean, you're saving money in the rotation to add money to your lineup. I mean, that it's crazy thinking, but it's something to think about because, Stearns talked about they want Alonso back, but there's starting to be rumors by multiple reporters that the Mets are starting to look at Bregman more and more now. So
you know what I like here? The chosen one. Why wouldn't you just re-sign Pete Alonso and then go after Guerrero Jr. next year anyways? Why wouldn't you do that?
I mean, you could.
If we're talking about Bregman, and I understand it's third base versus first base, and we're talking about 2 first basemen, but again, if you're going to allocate a DH position, and the only reason I would think that you wouldn't do that is if you're projecting Brandon Nimmo or Juan Soto to be a DH in the future, right? So that's probably like Moneyball. But like, if we're talking about going for it, right? You know what I mean? Let's say they go ahead and do both of that. And again, this is like playing MLB The Show at this point. It's just like there's definitely no way. But like in theory, if we're talking about spending $200 million on both Bregman and Pete Alonso, why wouldn't we just talk about Pete Alonso and then just wait for Vlad Guerrero, and you can just have a DH for a couple of years, and then I don't know, get rid of Pete via trade, whoever's going to take. Again, it's Moneyball. It's not going to happen. It's the MLB The Show type stuff. But again, this is why I don't believe in like both Bregman and Pete. It has to be one or the other. And again, the reason why I'm in favor of Pete Alonso over Bregman, if you would give me the 2 choices, is that you're not going to have Vientos playing out of position at that point. And I'm not saying Pete Alonso does not play a good first base. Let's objectively, with the statistics, he does not play a good first base. Yes, he picks baseballs better than a lot of first basemen. Yes, his stretches and, saving his infielders sometimes are top notch. That's top tier. But the range, everything else associated with Pete Alonso at first base is not good. And I'm very, very well aware of that fact. But again, right, like he's playing in position and Vientos has to learn a brand new position at that point, which is not up the David Stearns alley.
He's played first base a decent amount in the minors. It's not like he played, he DH'd and played first base a lot because remember, Beatty was in the minor leagues with Vientos prior to him coming up. Beatty was the third baseman, so he was DH'ing and playing first base more than he was actually playing third base. The Mets started to play Vientos at third base once Beatty came up. And Beatty got the starting job. So
if you want to make that argument, then I can get behind that. But again, we all know that minor leagues and those situational differences are not the same as the major leagues.
100%.
Stuff moves faster. Anyways, 100%. But I agree with you 100%.
Pete Alonso wasn't very good coming out of the minor leagues defensively, and he became better in the majors, right?
Correct.
Vientos did the same thing, right? Nobody knew Vientos was going to be this good at third base. Nobody,
Correct.
Even the Mets. So, they can surprise you. And I think the confidence level of Vientos, I think Vientos has more range than Pete Alonso, in my opinion. And it is a corner position. there's a couple of things you have to learn. Again, I played third base, and I occasionally played first base, right? The cutoffs are a little bit different. Again, the range is still got to be there. You still got to go into the hole, but at first base, you got to know, how far to go into the hole, making sure you can get back to the bag if your second baseman's around, which Pete Alonso has issues with, right? So, again, this is pipe dream talking. But again, because of the rumors of Bregman and the Mets' interest in him, we have to talk about all scenarios here, because then we're not doing our jobs. It's not like we dislike Pete Alonso or dislike Bregman or, don't want Vientos at first base. We're trying to be objective here in every scenario, because again, this is a show about the winter meetings. This is a show of what GMs are thinking of and the best possibilities here. Because if you can get Bregman, it's hard to say no if you're a GM, if you can land Bregman. And then you worry about the other scenarios after that. You could do a lot worse than Pete Alonso, Juan Soto, Bregman, Juan Soto. Like, it could be a lot worse. Right. So, you're not losing much. So, you can, that's the scenarios that we're throwing out there. I just want to make it clear that we're playing devil's advocate, and yeah, we're throwing our opinions out there, but we're trying to be objective in what the GM mind is going forward, because we know Stearns likes to think outside the box here. He's already proven that. And before we came on, about an hour before that, the Bregman news started to pop up a little bit. Again, how serious is that? We don't know. But again, we didn't think the Mets were in on Burns and Fried at all. All of a sudden, it popped up today, right after Juan Soto has signed. So it's crazy to think, but you got to be objective here, because we wouldn't be, what the hell are we doing there? So, I think that's a good conversation to have, even though, people will have difference of opinions of either bringing up back Alonso, Bregman, maybe both, which is crazy, but who the hell knows? And again, Passing got me a little, I got the jitters, man. Like I got the, the shakes, man. I'm like, ooh, that got me excited. Passing don't say stupid stuff like that, and it's not necessarily true, right? Passing don't say dumb stuff and make him look like a fool like the rest of the reporters. So
how many? I'm curious between these two guys, the doubles category too, because again, we can talk about home runs. I'm curious about the doubles too, and how much I know it was 31-30 in favor of Pete Alonso in 2024, but I'm talking about historically between Alonso and Bregman. How many doubles are they? Because again, like we're talking about gap to gap power. Not only the home runs, that's not only the concerning factor here. We're also talking about doubles. So let's take a look at this. I'm curious before we transition to a new topic. Actually, so it was 31-30 in favor of Pete in 2024. In 2023, it was 28-21 in favor of Bregman, 27 for Pete in 2022 versus 23. Yeah, so I mean, again,
can I ask you, since you're looking at the stats, what about strikeouts? Because I know Bregman puts the bat on the ball a lot more, and we know Pete Alonso's strikeouts have gone up the last couple of seasons. If you have that number, quickly. Yeah,
so let's take a look at the strikeouts too. That's a pretty good important measure there too. I mean, Alonso strikes out at a very higher rate. 172 compared to 86. So you're talking about close to 90 strikeouts more for Pete Alonso.
And on top of that, Bregman gets on base. If you're talking about Juan Soto being behind Pete Alonso or behind Bregman, Bregman's getting on base for that guy more than Pete Alonso. So yeah, it might help Pete Alonso with his stats, but Bregman gets on base, and that gives Juan Soto, who, why wouldn't you want him up in a big spot? That's over 100 strikeout difference. Man, that is huge in the middle of the lineup. I know people love home runs, and Pete Alonso has that that big possibility. But man,
Bregman historically has gotten on base at a much higher clip than Pete Alonso, but Pete Alonso actually got on base at a higher clip than him in 2024. That was the only year that happened. Yeah. The only year.
Again, there's arguments to be had, and again, this is me. I've said it. Pete Alonso, what he did in the playoffs, it convinced me that I want Pete Alonso back. But again, I'm trying to be objective here, sure, based on the rumors that have been said that the Mets, again, right after Juan Soto signed, the Corbin Burns news started to pop out, the Fried today, the Bregman today, and with the passing, and the only hyping up the Mets here and talking about releasing a Kraken and stuff like that with Cohen, it's starting to make me think they might do something crazy here that is not necessarily crazy bad. It might be crazy good that might be outside the box, but really beneficial. And yeah, it might move some people around, but the lineup is going to be scary. And again, I still think that it's really a possibility that we might see something a little outside the box crazy here in a good way. So, and the interest from Bregman, I still believe, is more a situation where there's more potential of Pete Alonso leaving here. Because again, guys, what did we talk about? If Juan Soto did not go back to the Yankees, you would think they would try to go after Pete Alonso. And that's another team added to the mix for Pete Alonso, which drives up the price. And if this drives up the price to north of $185 million, I don't think the Mets are going to go there. I think desperate teams might be willing to get to that $200 million plateau. He is a Boris client, guys. Boris has been winning this offseason so far, right? The biggest sports contract in history goes to Juan Soto. So Boris is clearly out for revenge. And Pete Alonso's part of that project. And we have to remember that part, right? Pete Alonso turned down an offer of 6 years, 160 or something like that, whatever it was the Mets offered. And he declined that. You think he's probably thinking another $20 million more in next year, where I think the Mets probably will go. But if competition gets crazy, again, we all thought Soto was going to get around $500 million, maybe crazy 550. It ended up being $200 million more than what we thought. So why wouldn't Pete Alonso go up a little bit more? Maybe 20, 30, $40 million because of the competition, Chris. And I don't know if you heard that part that I was talking about, but that's the issue is we don't know, because the Yankees didn't get Pete Alonso, they're definitely in on Pete Alonso now. I mean, if they didn't get Juan Soto, they're definitely in on Pete Alonso. That adds another team to the sweepstakes for Pete Alonso, which means more competition, which means the price will be driven up just based on clear facts of teams involved. And especially if the Mariners shed payroll and get rid of Castillo, that's another team that has been linked to Pete Alonso, including the Cubs that have wanted him for 3 years. And who knows who else? You know what I'm saying, Chris?
Yeah, no, 100%. And nothing more backs that fact that you just said up than what this report that Ken Rosenthal just retweeted here. Brian Cashman said they met with Blake Snell on the very day he signed with the Dodgers. And Scott Boras told Cashman that things were progressing quickly and to make an offer if they were interested. And Cashman said that he told Boras, I told him I can't make an offer until I know what's going on with Soto first because I couldn't do both at that level. So, yeah.
The Yankees aren't signing two top free agents.
The Yankees chips were all in on Juan Soto essentially, and now they missed out on a pitcher that they could have been interested in, and they also missed out on Willy Adames. So there you go. But I agree with you in terms of what you just said, 100%. I mean, again, the Yankees but the same thing could be true for the Mets too, right? How many big name free agents were they going to be in on? Before Juan Soto signed. When you're allocating that much money, you got to wait for that domino to fall first.
I agree, but the Mets were also making small sign-ins where, see, the difference here is I think Brian Cashman was handcuffed while Hal Steinbrenner was trying to get Juan Soto. Steve Cohen was letting Stearns work while Cohen was taking care of the Juan Soto situation. So there's the difference. And with another report coming out that Cashman couldn't make an offer to Blake Snell because they couldn't allocate to. So this just tells you that if the Yankees were serious about Blake Snell and Juan Soto, they couldn't make big offers to both of them because that would clearly throw them over that third luxury tax. And guess what, guys? The Yankees aren't going over it.
Nope.
So there's your problem. They're not getting two big free agents now. That is a fact now. Now they might trade for Bellinger and maybe sign a pitcher or maybe get another position player probably, but they're not signing two for big money. So Yankee fans, pick one of your big free agents. That's all you're going to get.
Yeah. No, I don't know what they're going to do. We're concerned about what the Mets are going to do. That's what we're concerned about.
But this is a broad show. That's why.
Sure. Yeah. What do you think? Do you want to talk about the bullpen market with the Jordan Romano signing? Because I think that was a sneaky good signing for the Phillies. But again, that they're going to lose one or two guys in that pen in Hoffman and probably Estevez as well. And now they're putting in a guy that, again, is in the prime of his career, but just had one of the most uncertain years via injury and just lack of success that he had to offer. So, it's, again, when it comes to the bullpen, and we can kind of transition that into what the Mets bullpen plan is going to be with your Loaisiga video and talking about that latest report, because I like Loaisiga a lot, man. I like Loaisiga a lot. I know the injury factor is there. He's only pitched 21 innings in the last 2 years. But the sinker, the movement, and the velocity, with that much movement and to throw it for 97 to 98 miles per hour is fantastic. He's got a 3-pitch arsenal that he evenly distributes after that in the changeup and the curveball. And again, just the electricity factor. And I know he's coming off of UCL surgery, and that's always a scary thing to bank on. But again, you have to imagine that this is a classic David Stearns, or would be a David Stearns pickup, in terms of a low value, super high risk reward in the bullpen. And honestly, this kind of makes me, if the Mets signed Loaisiga, I would be very shocked if they made a attempt to re-sign Ryan Stanek, right? Because I think that the stuff plays for both in terms of having that one dominating pitch and having that electricity and the velocity. Obviously, Stanek's is the splitter and Loaisiga's is the sinker. And again, I don't know. That's what I'm thinking, because we mentioned it yesterday on our stream about the bullpen outlook with the names that we were mentioning, how roster spots can get taken very quickly. It could fill up very quickly. You know what I mean? And you still need to prioritize at that point a lefty in the bullpen. So there's not many other spots in the bullpen to give away when you're talking about Edwin Diaz, Reed Garrett, Jose Buto, maybe a Danny Young. Again, I don't want to pencil in Danny Young, but if they want to go two lefties, then it would be Danny Young, unless it's Nate Lavender. So,
yeah, and I agree with the Stanek Loaisiga situation, because you think the Mets would prioritize one of those guys plus a lefty.
Yes,
on the market. So as we talked about, with Minter a couple of times, and I wanted to bring up what we're talking about right now. Easy's talking about Cashman gives up on relievers. They didn't give up on Loaisiga. Loaisiga got hurt. Loaisiga got hurt over the last 2 seasons. You got to remember, in 2023, he was starting to have arm issues. The Yankees kept on testing him and couldn't find the issue, and they still threw him out there. Again, they screwed up him badly. And then they finally figured it out in April, when the UCL finally completely was partially torn. They finally figured it out a week until last season. And so they never gave up on him. He got hurt. So it's not the Yankees giving up on them. So I'm not concerned about that at all. I 100% agree with you. It's either Stanek or Loaisiga, and you would think Loaisiga would be a lot more cheaper, which, again, this is what Stearns does. You can save money in the bullpen and work the magic with the money elsewhere in the rotation and the lineup. And I think that's what the Mets are going to do, specifically in the bullpen. And you could probably save between $3 to $4 million from Loaisiga, because what is he going to get? $5 million maybe, when Stanek could probably get 10, 11?
You think?
Well, the way the numbers are going, like Romano, he's coming back from a major injury, and he got $7.5 million. Stanek was,
I think 8.5. I think 8.5, right?
Stanek was healthy and pitched all year. He's going to get 10 for a guy who wasn't injured and pitched well. And Loaisiga is probably going to get less than Romano, or around the same amount, or I would think a couple of $1 million less.
Yeah. Maybe I was underselling the bullpen values of just a little bit. So yeah, I would expect Loaisiga to get probably maybe half that. I would be inclined to say, you know
Well,
what, we have.
Loaizaga got a minor league deal.
I don't think so. I think his upside still is a shoe-in for a major league deal.
Yeah, I would think so too. But it's been weird because again, who knows? But
It's a good thought.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's the other thing, right? So Stanek Loaizaga seems like it's either one of those guys. And again, the way Stearns works, you could save $3 million. I know it doesn't sound like a lot of money when Cohen, you have deep pockets, but when you allocate less money to the bullpen, and you might get, it's low risk, high reward here. Once again, you can allocate that couple extra $1 million to overall money you want to give somebody in the rotation or two, or even another bat in the lineup. So that's a good call by you. I didn't even think about the Stanek Loaizaga connection. Well, I mean, They could get both. I mean, for all we know, but you would think they would want that lefty.
That's what I wanted to do, Rob, right now. Like, let's take a look at the bullpen real quick. Let's just take a look at who's locked into the bullpen as of right now, right? Let me pull up the Mets active roster because this is a very valid conversation to have in terms of the bullpen market shaking out. So what do we say? The Mets are going to try to carry 6 pitchers in their rotation and start with a 6-man rotation, right? So that's going to leave 7 bullpen spots available for you. And you can think of Clay Holmes as a hybrid guy, but based off the reports, we'll assume that he impresses enough to crack the 6-man rotation, right? So let's take a look at this. You've got Jose Butto, 1, Reed Garrett, 2, Edwin Diaz, 3. Daniel Nunez, 4.
Okay.
Then you have fringe guys that we can make the assumption on right now. So 4 solidified bullpen spots. We'd have to make a decision on Kranick. We'd have to make a decision on Huascar Brazaban.
Mm-hmm.
And
Foley.
Yes, those are the 3 fringe guys. And I'm assuming that Tyler McGill is not going to be even an option there. You know what I mean? I'm assuming he's just going to be AAA depth. Unless they trade him, because he could be a trade piece too for whoever wants to take him on.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about 4 solidified roster spots, 3 fringe guys for competing for a total of 7 bullpen spots. Now we have a Loaizaga report that would be 5. Let's say it comes to fruition. That's 5 bullpen spots right there. I mean, any of those fringe guys, you say you sign Loaizaga and Stanek, and then then you need a lefty too. So we're not even taking into account the lefty, right? Danny Young is also the fringe guy that I missed out on there.
Yeah.
So this is tough. This is tough. Emmy's is just trolling me right now. Listen. Easy. Never mind. Anyways, Easy doesn't forget, huh?
No,
I still stick by my statement though that I was confident in that Mets bullpen. I'll never ever.
You just can't harness it.
Anyways, I'll admit that I was wrong. Huascar Brazaban has elite stuff. He just did not translate into the elite outcomes. But again, so you take a look at 4 solidified spots already, right? Mm-hmm. And then you're talking about Ryan Stanek. You're talking about potentially bringing back Brooks Raley. You're talking about Loaizaga. So again, you could do that and this makes it to where I think maybe the Mets go with a 1 lefty bullpen instead of 2. I know a lot of people want the 2, but there's just not that many roster spots to give out, in my honest estimation. You know what I mean? So you've got 4 right now that we just named, and then you could bring in Loaizaga. You could bring in Stanek again. That would be awesome to have in the front end of your bullpen. That'd be awesome. And then you'd have the lefty spot open in terms of bringing back either Brooks Raley, getting a guy like AJ Minter, and I highly, 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 did I say highly yet? I highly doubt the Mets are going to be in on Tanner Scott. But maybe if, again, Steve Cohen is willing to unleash the Kraken, as Passan said, maybe they go ahead and get wind of the Dodgers wanting to go get him and they say, screw you, we'll sign him instead. Maybe. Again, wishful thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. It is very interesting because the roster spot, especially if you go to a 6-man rotation, if you go to a 6-man rotation, that's an extra rotation. That's the extra guy on the roster that is taking up a rotation spot that you're going to lose out of a bullpen spot. And again, that's why I don't like 6-man rotations. 6-man rotations requires you to carry one less bullpen arm, and you go into 6-man rotation to limit the innings of other pitchers, right? That's basically what you're doing here. So that means you're going to be using more bullpen with less bullpen staff. That's why I don't like that concept. But again, it's looking like the Mets, arguably are going to be doing that. But again, they also have to sign a rotation. They have to, acquire more rotation pieces before we even talk about a 6-man rotation. That's a lot of there's still pieces missing here in this rotation. Montas, possibly Clay Holmes, Peterson, and Senga is not cutting it. That's it. You need at least 2 more starters. And we all believe McGill is going to be in the minor leagues. So,
and then what do you do with Paul Blackburn too? Like, we haven't even mentioned his name too. You know what I mean?
Well, that's why I think Paul Blackburn is going to be that when he's healthy. That's why I don't think they're going to be doing a 6-man rotation right away. Like, if depending on who they get, I think the 6-man rotation is going to be open for Blackburn when he comes back. I think it's probably like mid-May.
You think starting off the season with Kodai Senga like coming back into form? This is all because of Kodai Senga. Let's just be honest here.
Well, yeah, well, that's why I'm thinking they can start off at a 5-man rotation, have an extra long man or an arm in the bullpen, and it kind of solves that issue. If because the 6-man rotation, you're still going to be using all that bullpen with one less bullpen arm. So I'm thinking that they, because if you have too many arms, like unless you just throw, like, again, where is Blackburn going here? If you're going to have 6 guys in a rotation and all your bullpen arms filled as well, where's Blackburn going? You're not going to leave him in the minor leagues. I don't think they would do that. So that's what I'm saying. Like, they're going to have to leave that spot open unless you throw Tyler McGill as your 6th starter until Blackburn comes back.
Let's look at Paul Blackburn's contract. I'm curious about what it is. We know he has one more year left on his deal. $6 million. I mean, would you just eat that and just say we need to free up the roster spot?
I mean, they might, but Stearns traded for him, so I don't see him doing that.
Sure.
I think that was a solid trade. I think Blackburn would have been fine. I think he would have been I think he would have been helpful in the bullpen in the playoffs. I think that was a solid move. Like that was a low key solid move that just didn't work out because of his injury, which was a weird one. So, again, and this is the issue that the Mets are falling into right now, is that if they are going to start the season with a 6-man rotation, and again, they need to fill 3 more spots, right? At this point, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, from what we just said, without the fringe guys into consideration, yeah.
Yeah, so right now it's Senga, Montas, Holmes, and Peterson, right? I'm still not putting Holmes in the rotation until he actually proves it in spring training. I find it hard to believe the Mets are going to throw Holmes in the rotation if he doesn't succeed and do well in spring training. So if he doesn't, I think Holmes is going to be in the bullpen to start the season. So I'm not putting Holmes in the rotation. So right now it's Senga, Peterson, Montas. So that means there's 3 spots available. You can say Tyler McGill's on the roster, but we all believe that he's not going to be in this rotation. Blackburn's not coming back until at least mid-May, maybe later. That means the Mets have got to acquire via free agency or trade 3 more guys. Now, if that's a combination of Burns, Mania, Buehler, or Buehler, Mania, Castillo, whatever combination you want to put, right? They still got to add 3 more starting pitchers at the very least, even if it's tier B pitchers.
Yeah.
I just, that's the issue. Like, you're going to run into a 5th and 6th starter where it's like you're throwing these guys out there just to appease Kodai Senga. This is why it pisses me off that they think that if that's the true scenario they're going to go with as Kodai Senga being the ace, which I still don't think is going to happen. But if that's the thought process, you got to appease your quote unquote ace to have a 6-man rotation, but you're putting bad, not good options at the back end of the rotation for a 6th spot that is kind of up in the air right now. And, unless it's a decent guy, like if Montez was a 6th guy, I'd be like, Okay, but realistically, you're going to have 3 better starters in front of Montas to make that actually happen. And I don't see that happening.
That's why I think the Mets signed 3 more pitchers, and one of them is going to be Walker Buehler. That's why I think that 100%, because you fix that problem with the depth of the bullpen, right? In terms of going out there and signing these 3 rotation starters, but that would also allow you to move Clay Holmes to the bullpen. And again, depending on who these 3 rotation starters are, if one of them was Walker Buehler, you can also move Walker Buehler to the bullpen, and that would be your 6th bullpen guy. And then you'd just open up room as your 6th starter, probably a Paul Blackburn or Tyler McGill or whoever else you want to throw out there. So again, flexibility is awesome. And if that's the route the Mets take, I would love to see that happen, but you have to add more arms, right? You have to have a flexible guy that has upside in Walker Buehler. You have to add a midline rotation guy in either, I would consider probably Manaya in that midline rotation, realm category, or Pivetta also falls under that. And also your top tier guy that you're going to either sign or trade for. Like, you'd have to check all those boxes. And again, that's not out of the realm of possibility, right? If the Mets are going for it, that's not out of the realm of possibility. Now, it's going to get tricky, right? Because Walker Buehler, given the 1-year deals that we've been seeing, or the 2-year deals with the whatever, I mean, last year and this year, I mean, Walker Buehler is going to make what? How much do you think he's going to make? I would say
25.
16? What?
20, a year?
I'm saying 1 year for Walker Buehler.
I think he's going to get close to 20.
Which could be true, right? So
the reason why, because again, Montas got $17 million. Everybody believes that Buehler is much better. Even with coming off the injury and what he showed in the playoffs, he's getting Kikuchi money. He's getting a qualifying offer type money, in my opinion, if it's a 1-year deal. Even if it's a 2-year deal, he's getting probably 2 for 50, 2 for 48, around that. Yeah. He's not getting Montas money. That makes no sense.
But it does, though, because Montas had the injury history too, but I mean,
Buehler has the upside of being an ace. I don't think people see Montas as a possibility of a 1 or a 2.
No, I agree with you.
At best, Montas is the number 3. I think people see Buehler just coming off an injury as a number 3, and possibly a possible number 2, and if great things happen, a possibly ace. I think people are looking at it like that.
You know what? I would say 20 mil. I would say 20 mil even for Buehler.
I think that's fair.
1 year, 20 mil. And Amir, I see Amir's comment in the chat. If you think that we're too low on Buehler, Spotrac's projection for Buehler, as ridiculous as it was for $4 million, if you can believe that.
Yeah, I don't think they updated that from the beginning of the season, to be quite honest with you.
I don't know how their algorithms work, but yeah, that was definitely just wrong. But yeah, starting pitching is expensive, man. Starting pitching, yeah. See, Daniel's saying 3.88 is round 4. It's crazy, man.
Yeah.
But they don't adjust for that, obviously. I'm just like, I just like to point that out because I think that's a good baseline. But again, they always undercut those projections. But yeah, starting pitching is expensive, man. It really is. And the Mets are going to find that out. Again, they came in at a disadvantage, but if Steve Cohen really is willing to just say, the hell with it in terms of these luxury tax thresholds. I mean, the guy paid $100+ million in luxury tax penalties last year alone. So he has proven that he has done it in the past with a roster that wasn't as good, presumably, as what they're trying to build right now. And now that you have Juan Soto, it's full go time. It is full go time for Juan Soto. What do you think about this, though? I know we were talking about Pete Alonso, and I hate to just segue this conversation back into that because I don't think we've had any reports ever since we've been live. We're here to bring you the latest reports. I know that there was some smoke about Anthony Rizzo landing a 1-year deal with the Pirates. I haven't seen that come to fruition factually, but what do you think about this pivot point? In the video that I released on my channel today, I talked about the re-signing of Pete Alonso after the Juan Soto deal. If the Mets see Pete Alonso walk, and let's say they decide to prioritize, as per your point, an Alex Bregman, maybe Vientos is still the DH, because guess what? The Tampa Bay Rays could be willing to trade their first baseman in Yandy Diaz. And Yandy Diaz has a contract that's worth, I want to say 11 or 12 mil. Actually, I don't know what the first year is, but it's 2 years, 22 million on his contract. But the kicker of that is that there's a club option after the 2025 season. So regardless of whether you get Bregman or not in that scenario, you could just accept the club option, bring him back to be a DH, right? If you want to pursue Vlad Guerrero in 2026, or you could just say, thank you for your 1 year of service. You can go back into free agency. We don't have any more use for you. And you can just use him as that rental at first base. Again, this is the presumption in my mind that Pete Alonso walks. This is a backup plan. What do you think about that?
Yeah. I haven't checked Diaz's numbers. What was his power numbers? Because I know people love that.
So they were down in 2024. Objectively, I will say that. In 2023, he had a career year with 22 home runs, a 932 OPS, and I think a 300 plus batting average, if I'm not mistaken. But in 2024, he still hit 281. The home run number was only 14, so that went down. And then the OPS was like 755 or something like that. So objectively across the board, the numbers went down. But again, it was kind of unrealistic in my mind to follow up a type of campaign that he had in 2023, especially given the age. Again, if this is a rental, right, for 1 year, he's 34 years old, 33 going on 34. So that's essentially how I'm factoring that.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be against it. I would think if you do go Yandy Diaz and go kind of the lower route at first base, I think you would probably have to go Bregman, Burns. You have to get a top line starter and obviously bring in Bregman. I think that would, and then DH Vientos, or in that case, that's what would probably happen. And that's not a bad thing. That's an interesting one. Again, that's the thing though. Like, I think there's so many possibilities when it comes to Pete Alonso. And again, if the reports are true, Pete Alonso is coming back to the Mets for the final call. So, and that's the issue I think the Mets are kind of finding themselves in. It's like they can't wait for Pete Alonso, because I don't know if traction is going to happen with Pete Alonso this quickly unless the Mets sign him right away. I think if the Mets don't sign him right away, might drag out for a couple of weeks with Pete Alonso, and Bregman might be off the board. And now that kind of puts the Mets behind the 8 ball, where they're like, now we have to go after Pete Alonso because there's not really a backup plan. Bregman could be that backup plan. So, I think if Pete Alonso don't sign over the next couple of days with the Mets, I think it's more likely he is not here, because the Mets have to pivot. And I think that's a fact. So yeah, this is going to be very interesting. Again, I said it yesterday once the Juan Soto news broke, that I think the Mets are going to finish the Alonso deal rather quickly, and I'm standing behind that. But if it doesn't happen over the next couple of days, I kind of if this stretches out longer than I think with Pete Alonso, the longer it takes, I think the more likelihood he is gone. And the Mets go a different route. If that's Christian Walker, Yandy Diaz, a stopgap like Carlos Santana,
yeah,
and don't then get Bregman, and you can put Vientos at DH. You could look at a lot of different ways here, and that's the other thing. The Mets have a lot of different options as well that can still make your team better in different ways by adding a couple of guys instead of just Pete Alonso.
I want to come back to this conversation while we're on this, but there is Andy Martino stated about Sean Manaea picking up that there's increasing optimism. There may be a reunion with the Mets. So
yeah, I always felt that likely. I think Manaea really loves it here.
Yeah.
And I always feel like he might actually take $1 million or $2 million less to come back here. I think he would take a little less, not a lot, but I think he would get paid handsomely and what he's worth, but I think he might leave a few $1 million off the table to come back to the Mets. So that's good news. I mean, if we can lock up Manaea, now the Mets are rolling. Now we're really rolling here when it comes to the rotation because they can go a lot of different routes now. And I still think, if you get Manaea, go get a top line starter, that's one more spot in the rotation, and they can go with somebody, a much prove-it deal where you might not cost a lot of money, and it might be a guy with a low risk, high reward situation.
Yeah, 100%. I made a video on extending Sean Manaea quite literally like 5 days ago, 6 days ago, and saying what the next move might be for the New York Mets. And obviously the next move was Juan Soto. Actually, it was Clay Holmes, right? This was before the Clay Holmes signing. So again, not super upset about that signing at all. It was great value, fantastic value. And I'm happy that Clay Holmes is on board. But again, we're thinking about him. It's sort of a pipe dream to sell us on that he's going to be a solidified rotation arm. The project is there to be had, but you got to get, and I think that if you start with Sean Manaea, I am so much more confident in getting that top line starter. Because for me, if the Mets are able to strike a deal with Sean Manaea, maybe in the next couple of days, that shows me that they are serious. Again, the same situation with Pete Alonso. The sooner they re-sign either of these guys or both of them, the more that's going to tell me that, there is either another bat coming or another arm coming, and definitely another arm coming, right? Maybe another bat is a stretch, but another arm coming for sure. And yeah, I agree. Sean Manaea likes pitching in New York, and I would expect that. But and I see people talking about Christian Walker in the chat. I also made a video about Christian Walker. I compared and contrasted him to Pete Alonso and about the contract differences of these two guys given their age. In the scenario that Pete Alonso walks as well, Christian Walker might land maybe a 3-year deal, right? Mm-hmm. I would say. Given the lack of first base options that are in line for a multi-year deal, maybe in an unlikely scenario, maybe he gets 4 years, which would probably take the Mets out. But if he's in line for a 3-year deal, and if Pete Alonso walks, you can also use him as a first base stopgap and then transition him to a DH spot as well. And again, with his age, that would make perfect sense. And you'd only have 2 more years of that contract left on Christian Walker. So I guess question for you, I'm not sure if we're doing rapid fire, but my rapid fire question, if we were doing rapid fire, would be if again, this is, I wish I could put asterisks around because this is all ifs right now. If Pete Alonso walks, you have an option between trading for Yandy Diaz or just signing Christian Walker outright. Which one would you prioritize?
Christian Walker. Because I the power I seen there, he's very good defensively. I think that bat just works really nice in the Mets lineup. And again, this is saying that Alonso's not coming back. I would go Christian Walker. I think it's more likely you get more production out of Christian Walker than you do Yandy Diaz.
Yep,
and
I agree.
And to go back what you said about the possible long shot of Holmes being in the rotation. If we have been talking about this whole time, the Mets might get 3 more rotation arms. That kind of takes Clay Holmes out of the rotation because you'll have 6 guys. So, and that's what I'm saying. Being in on Burns, looking like Manaea is looking better and better back here, and the Mets get another pitcher. That's 3 arms there. Objectively, 3 arms. That means Clay Holmes is out of the rotation. I mean, they still might stretch him out just in case somebody gets hurt during spring, and I think that's more of a reason. I think, this might sound crazy, but can this Clay Holmes sign in with the possibility of giving him a chance to be a starter as I would say a fallback plan if Kodai Senga can't stay healthy in spring?
I was going to say, yeah, Clay Holmes, just again, having that ability in spring training, getting those reps, if there's any, and it's not just, it's just not just Kodai Senga. If it's any rotation arm that gets injured throughout the season, having the ability to say, oh, now we have a Clay Holmes to go in and start, right? Without having to rely on a guy like Tyler McGill is plus, plus, plus. I'll take that all day long. All day long.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. And I'm gonna give you my rapid fire questions because the last topic that I had on my phone was Burns and Fried. We kind of talked about that enough throughout the entire show. We talked about the Mets being involved. We know how many teams are involved in those two guys, and it's a lot of the teams that that were involved in Juan Soto. So we're just gonna put it on the back burner with that, and we'll just leave that. My rapid fire question: who do you think the Mets sign next? And obviously it's a known name, I would say top 25 free agents.
Top 25 free agents. Okay, that changes the game.
Yeah, and not some small guy like like Stanek. I'm talking about like high priced or like top 3 pitcher, and a bat.
Oh, you want it to be a bat?
It can be anything, but some that's like a top 25 free agent.
Oh, I'm going to stick with what I said on my video, right? On my standalone video that they're going to re-sign Sean Manaea. I think it's going to be Sean Manaea.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay,
that's what I believe. Yeah.
Were you going to say something that you were looking down and you were going to?
I was because the same reporter saying, I appreciate that you are noticing that, picking up on the context clues. The same Astros beat reporter for The Athletic said the Astros have already officially received trade inquiries about Kyle Tucker, but nothing is considered serious or imminent. This is The Athletic. I can't read the article because it's paywalled. So if anybody actually pays for The Athletic, please let us know. As much as I like The Athletic, I don't have the budget right now to go ahead and just pay for that. So, yeah, but that's from Chandler Rome again. So again, like teams are like pressing the issue on the Astros to see if they're really going to trade some top guys in Valdez and Tucker this offseason.
Yep. And all right, so you said Sean Manaea. I am going to say, to answer my own question,
I would have asked you too, Rob. Don't worry. I would have asked you the same thing. I would have been like, what's your opinion on it?
Max Fried.
Dude, so did I convince you on this Max Fried train? Like, are you on the Max Fried hype train now? Because that's been my guy from the start.
Yeah, and not necessarily changing my mind, but since the interest is there for the Mets, you are 100% right in your video and what you've been saying the whole time on Hot Stove. Fried seems like a Stearns guy, right? Not my guy. Seems like a Stearns guy. And I've said this from the beginning. I trust Stearns. Like I might not be, jumping head over heels for Max Fried because he does concern me. But I mean, you could do he's a top line starter. I'm not going to complain. So yeah. I think because we heard the rumors about it, I think Fried's going to be obviously cheaper, most likely than Burns. I think the Mets Stearns would look there more. So I'm gonna say Fried to the Mets.
I would love that. That would have been my prediction all off season long from the start. That's my top guy. Since John Rossi's in the chat right now, and I was completely forgetting about this name. How can I forget? Because I'm so very adamant about wanting this guy. Rob, you scoffed at me when I brought his name up because this was before the Juan Soto signing, and I was saying potentially a backup option if we didn't get Juan Soto, if we went the short-term deals route. I think it was Mothman, who's not here with us right now, in the comment section, but he brought it up on that stream. What if the Mets go cheap if they don't get Juan Soto? Well, they got Juan Soto, so that's not a concern. But you know what? I would still go and get this guy, at least at the very minimum, as a platoon bat for the DH. His name is Jock Peterson. I want Jock Peterson in a Mets uniform as another bat. Because again, if you re-sign Pete Alonso, right, there's an opportunity to still go get a bat like Jock Peterson. I think it's going to cost you, but it's not going to cost you that much. And he's a journeyman at this point, so it's not going to cost you the years.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just read this hypothetical lineup out for you, Rob, since we're having some fun on this stream?
Go ahead.
Francisco Lindor, Brandon Nimmo, Juan Soto, Pete Alonso, Mark Vientos, Jock Peterson, Francisco Alvarez, Jeff McNeil, Jose Siri. Every one of those guys, I tweeted this out on my X account. Every one of those guys has 20 plus home run capability outside of Jeff McNeil. Jose Siri, 20 plus home runs. Alvarez, same thing. Even 25 plus, maybe. Peterson has 20 to 25 home run potential. Mark Vientos is 25 to 30 home run potential. Pete Alonso, 35 to 40 home run potential. Juan Soto, anywhere between, maybe late 20s to 40, as he posted last year. Again, in Yankee Stadium, I understand that, but home run potential. Brandon Nimmo, 20 plus home run potential. Francisco Lindor, 25 to 30 plus home run potential. Give me Jock Peterson. I like his bat. I really do. And if you're selling me on having Pete Alonso, Juan Soto as your staples of this lineup in this offseason, and surrounding that with Brandon Nimmo in the 2 spot and Mark Vientos in the 5 spot, following Jock Peterson in the 6 spot, I like that a lot. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I would think most of the lineup would be ready to go. If you do sign Alonso or you do sign Bregman and put Vientos to first base and you get Jock Peterson in late December, early January, where I think Jock Peterson you probably see later in December sign. I think, those are the journeyman's usually the last guys, before the minor league signings and the invites to spring training start happening in January. So I think if the roster is basically almost set, or the lineup in general is basically set with your lineup, and you got your first baseman, you got your third baseman, you got everybody you need in position. Yeah, if you're looking for that bat that can hit 20 home runs, because I want a DH that has power. I don't want, a guy that can give me singles as a DH. I want power. I want a 20 home run guy at least as a DH guy. And yeah, I would be okay with Jock Peterson. If it's a platoon situation or just him as the DH, I'm fine with that.
Boom. Yeah. Again, I think that and I think he signed relatively late last offseason, right? If I'm not mistaken, with the Diamondbacks. So yeah.
I'm sorry, but we're speaking about DH guys. We haven't really brought up Winker and Iglesias.
I would take Peterson over Winker. I'm sorry. I like Winker a lot, but I take Peterson over him.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. I think Winker brings that swag, and I think Winker can probably hit 15 home runs or something like that. But what do you think the Mets are going to bring back Iglesias? Because the roster spots are running out of room.
So if the Mets bring Iglesias back, Acuna has to start in AAA. It's either Acuna or Iglesias. There's
Castillo trade situation, which could be realistic if the Mets can get trade McNeil and put him in that deal, right? And you give
they'd have to eat a lot of that contract.
But again, when you're taking $108 million as the Mets and you're only giving $15 million, what is it, $30 million from McNeil? They're saving $70 million. So I think they would do that. And you could throw a prospect in there to make it a little bit more enticing. They could do that. And then, Acuna is your second baseman. Now you got Iglesias as your bench, and I still believe that McNeil might be on the block here. And again, this is why I'm still leaning towards the Mets trading for a star. I mean, again, they can still sign a top line starter, but, the only possibility I see McNeil getting traded is if they can package him with a prospect or two to land a starter. That's the only way I can see it. Because
off Brett Beatty.
Yeah, correct.
As one of the pieces, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, there's been interest in Brett Beatty because the value is still there for Brett Beatty from other teams because he's cheap and he's had a little bit of Major League Baseball experience, but you only need one team to believe in him. And again, that's the issue. Like I said, if you can get McNeil in that deal, again, Seattle's still saving a ton of money in that deal. So, that's the interesting thing, right? Iglesias is only coming back, in my opinion, if McNeil is traded, or the Mets think that Acuna can start in the minor leagues and see, play it out until McNeil shows nothing, and then you would have to bring up Acuna.
I would imagine that Jeff McNeil, just from my initial feelings, that Jeff McNeil is more of a trade candidate at the deadline, regardless of how well he does in the first half, than he is in the offseason. That's just my assumption, because you take a look at a team like Seattle that everyone wants to link Jeff McNeil to, with good reason, right? With good reason. Yeah. But the Mariners, again, and Luis Castillo, I want it to happen, so I'm trying to convince myself of it happening, but they're kind of a stingy team right now in terms of not giving up that rotation. They still see the future of that rotation. And I think that there was some back and forth on the timeline of my X account regarding Red Sox fans and Mariners fans talking about, the Red Sox proposing, and again, this is just fan to fan talk, fan base to fan base talk, but the Red Sox proposing trades that would send, I don't know, a guy like Duran over, not Duran, was it Duran? No, who's there for Cassis? A guy like Cassis over to the Mariners in exchange for like one of their fourth or fifth pitchers, because the Mariners rotation is deep, dude. It's deep.
I mean,
their
fourth and fifth rotation arms can be easily a number 2 or 3 in some rotations. Most.
Exactly. And so the Mariners fans were just like, there was a large population of Mariners fans that were like replying to that tweet, just scoffing at it and just saying no chance. Well,
then the Mariner fans are, I'm sorry if there's some in here, but they're idiots, because their biggest problem over the last couple of seasons wasn't their pitching. They needed offense, and they need a bat or possibly 2. Like, they can give up 1 pitcher and still have a dominant rotation and get the bat you need. And, as this is a winter meeting special, Brian Holtz saying that the Yankees would like Jazz Chisholm to move him to second base and work on trying to get somebody for third base.
Bregman.
So I just wanted to bring that up, that they showed that tweet.
What other third basemen on the market, if you don't mind me asking?
I would think they would go after Nolan Arenado.
Okay, sure.
That's what
there's rumors about the Dodgers wanting to go and trade for Nolan Arenado too, and I'm
that makes sense, because they really don't have a third baseman,
right?
So that's. But yeah, I could see the Yankees going after Arenado. I mean, I think that would be a good move for the Yankees. I know some people, here comes another older guy that is declining, but he's still an elite third baseman. He's going to Yankee Stadium, so you think the more power would be there, and he'll get that rejuvenation of being on a team that is a contender. As much as we think the lineup is kind of trash, there's still a team that constantly makes the playoffs. That might rejuvenate him a little bit. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I would think, I don't believe the Yankees are going to go after any Houston Astro that was involved in that cheating scandal. Correa, because somebody brought up that, the Yankees might look at bringing Correa in a trade. No, they're not. Right? They're not. And the same thing with Bregman, right? Bregman was very open to saying that, the Yankees need to shut the fuck up. They lost. Regardless of the situation, they still lost. All right? Cheating or not, right? It is what it is.
That's an interesting point, because Greg Amsinger on MLB Network, I forgot who he was talking to, they were talking about this very situation between Bregman and the Yankees, like rumors saying, if Bregman were to go to the Yankees and he struck out in his first at bat, or in an at bat on opening day or whatever in Yankee Stadium, would the fans boo him? And Greg Amsinger was just like, absolutely, they would boo him 100%. So yeah, I don't know, man. You know what? For me, you need a third baseman at that point. Screw whatever happened in the past.
Need to swallow their pride, like, seriously.
That's what I'm saying. Screw what happened in the past.
This is not even the fans' level of hatred for them. It is Brian Cashman himself continuing. Anytime he's asked a question about that, he gets angry. and talks about, we would have won if they didn't cheat. He still is leaning on that. So I don't think Brian Cashman will do that for any of the Astros. That can actually help their team. Correa, Bregman, those guys can help your team. I don't think he'll do that. I don't think he'll fall to that. I don't think he'll let himself fall to that level, even if it can help his team. Like, that is kind of sad to say, but I truly believe that because of his comments, and the fans are not smart enough to realize that it would help their team. I'm sorry. Get over it. It's over, right? You can bring Giambi over here. You can bring A-Rod over here. You can bring, I know it didn't work out, but you brought back the hated Ellsbury, who was a Red Sox, right? You want to talk about Babe Ruth? Let's go. You always want to talk about history and rings. Let's talk about 100 years ago. You know what I'm saying? So it's possible. And if it helps your team, who cares? Get over it.
Yeah.
Seriously, I don't care. If it helps your team, get over it. So, Chris, we're kind of over the 2-hour mark. I'm surprised we went that long. I didn't think it was long. But again, when it's a broad stream, and yeah, we talked a lot of Mets, but we try to open it up for a lot of different teams that the ones that lost out on Juan Soto were kind of the major focus here because they do have major holes, and when they lose Juan Soto, now they got to pivot to plan B because clearly Juan Soto was plan A for all these guys, and the Mets won that sweepstakes. So give everybody your final thoughts. We'll probably do another winter special, MLB Winter Special, probably the last day, which is Wednesday. I think we could do it then, and we can kind of recap everything that happened in the winter meetings. But let everybody know what's going on with your channel and your final thoughts.
Yeah, man. I'm gonna pick. There's one name in this stream that we've talked about that I'm going to probably release a video on tomorrow, maybe tomorrow night, depending. We'll see. But again, daily videos outside of these streams on my channel. Subscribe to the channel first and foremost to stay up to date on the latest news, the latest rumors, everything of that nature. Subscribe to Rob's channel. Again, we do these conjoined streams, but there's a lot of content and polls and stuff that we do outside of that as well. Rob works very hard on his channel. Again, the Loizaga video that you dropped, I was just like, he got that out super quick, to be honest with you. So yeah, subscribe to both channels. Again, we just want to be here for you all and provide objective as we can, because again, we're here to give our opinions, but as objective analysis as we can and keep it as entertaining as possible. So hopefully, for those of you all who have been here for, not only our post-game streams during the season and our pre-game streams during the season, which we will be doing again in 2025, make no mistake about that. You guys are enjoying the latest off-season content, videos, Juan Soto watch parties, and MLB Winter Meeting watch parties as well. Hit the thumbs up. Again, that is one of the best ways you can support the channel, by hitting the thumbs up. Tell your friends and family. But again, Mets fans, buckle up, because, if Jeff Passan is correct, if these reports past, even in addition to Jeff Passan, are correct, the New York Mets are going to have a very big offseason, and it's not limited, right, to just Juan Soto. There's going to be a flurry of moves, because we know that this Mets roster is on the way to becoming elite. They still have moves to make to get it to that threshold. That's what I believe. Let's go Mets. Steve Cohen and David Stearns, in this sort of mastermind process that both of these guys are using, right? Conjoined, going through this process together. They're going to get it right. And Mets fans, they are not naive. This is the last thing that I'll say. They're not naive to what this team needs. And just because the Mets got Juan Soto, and we probably can presume that Steve Cohen was leading that charge, David Stearns, he's the right man for the job. He's the right man for the job. So appreciate you all. Let's go Mets. And until a future stream, I appreciate it. This is fun.
Absolutely. I feel like we might do a hot stove possibly tomorrow if the schedule works it out. I think we should, because we did a Juan Soto show, but to directly lean towards all Mets, I think a hot stove might be in order tomorrow. But again, we'll talk about that.
I'm free.
thank you for tuning in to day one of the MLB Winter Meetings Special on both of our channels. We try to give a broad outlook on the winter meetings here. And yeah, the Mets came up because, well, we're Mets fans. But Mets fans, pre-order is available for the Juan Soto jersey, by the way, as I just ordered it.
I got mine in too.
Yeah. Again, they're not making you choose a number because, well, you have to wait for the press conference for him to choose the number. We all know the number, but again, they can't officially do it copyright and, license wise until he officially has that number ready to go. So with that said, order your Juan Soto jersey while the Yankee fans are burning their 22s with no name, even though it's Roger Clemens. Buy your Juan Soto Met jersey in black, blue, pinstripes, City Connect, which I don't think is available yet, but it might be very soon. With that said, guys, thank you for tuning in to day one of the Winter Meetings Special on our channels. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channels, guys. We will see you tomorrow, Mets fans, for probably a Mets hot stove to go over more hopeful signings and trade scenarios, and of course, more Juan Soto and lineup construction possibilities. With that said, have a good night, guys. Let's go, Mets. Baseball fans, good luck to your teams in the acquisition offseason, and hopefully you get the guys you are looking for. Have a great night, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Let's go, Mets.
In the dead of night, full of echo. Concrete jungle, dreams bust to grow. Mets in the air, chase glory, no fear. Broken backs, but hearts steer clear. OMG, the chaos, what a scene. Streets buzzing like a machine. Grimace from the shadows, chills on